Chapter 9. My father woke me up around noon. "Hey, you've been sleeping a long time." "Sorry, I think it's the pills," I said. "The doctor said that the sleepiness would get better." "Okay, that's good." He gave me a half smile. "Hey, you get to stay here for the next couple of days. Sound good?" "Yeah, but why?" "Something happened with your mom's work. Nothing you need to worry about, but she'll be pretty busy the next few days, so I offered to keep you." My skin prickled and I got goosebumps. "What happened?" "Like I said, nothing you need to worry about." "Did they catch the guy?" I didn't really care about showing my hand. I had a sudden and dire need for resolution. "What guy?" "The guy eating the dead." My father frowned and gave me a strange, confused look. He shook his head, almost in disappointment. "Did they?" I said again, sitting up. "There was a break-in," my father said. "Some kind of fight. That's all I know." "Can I call Mom?" I said. "I'm just really worried." "Sure," my dad said, smiling again. "Just don't expect to get much out of her." I got up and forced down some breakfast in the form of some cereal. It was stale tricks, but I ate it anyway, hoping it would calm my nerves a bit. When I was done, I picked up the phone. I called home first, but there was no answer. I called the office next, and after a long set of rings, my mom picked up. "Peaceful Gardens Funeral Home, this is Elizabeth. How may I help you?" "It's me, Mom," I said. "Dad said there was a break-in at the funeral home. What happened?" "Don't worry about it. Just enjoy the day with your father." "I can't if I don't know what happened," I added hastily. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. We're going to have to stay closed for a few days." "Why?" "It would only stress you out to know." "Did they catch the guy?" I said. She was quiet for a few moments. "What guy?" "The guy who was breaking in, who—" She would know I had been eavesdropping, but I had to find out. "The guy who cut open the dead body." "I don't know how you heard about that. Dr. Grant was very specific about keeping that away from you. It would stress you, and I agree." I growled. "Can you just tell me what happened, please?" "We don't know if it's related, Billy. It looks like some people broke in and had a gang fight. There was blood on the floor along with weapons. The detectives are here now photographing everything." "There was blood? Was anyone killed?" "No, it looks like they all left." My heart sank down into the pit of my stomach. "I upgraded the security system and forgot to set the alarm, so it's partially my fault. This place has always been a target for hooligans for some reason." "All right, Mom. Thanks for telling me the truth." "You're welcome, Billy. Please don't dwell too much on it. The police will find out who did it, I'm sure." School on Monday was a blur. I didn't see Anna. I asked a few people, and she apparently stayed home sick. I desperately wanted to talk to her, to hear that she was okay, or to hear her say that it wasn't all in my mind, that we really had fought Danny Fisker, but it would have to wait a day. I felt so scattered in my mind that I willfully took the antipsychotics to get some relief and actually sleep. Monday night was at my father's house again, and though it still felt peaceful there, I couldn't feel that I was totally safe. I had a feeling the monster would find me there too, somehow. I went to school again, this time actually able to function in class, but I was horribly lost on the subject matter. I took what notes I could, but I began to feel that the life I was living was actually a dream. Nothing seemed to make sense. Everything was out of context and had no meaning. At lunch I found Anna. "Are you all right?" I said. She leaned against me and hugged me slightly with one arm. "I'm okay. I've been shaken up, pretending to be sick." "I get it. Did we get him?" "No," I said. "The police think some hoods broke in and got into a fight while drunk or something." "So we won't get caught?" "I didn't say that. The cops might figure it out. I don't know. If they do, I guess I'll be in trouble again. They'll say I had another psychic break. Not if I tell them Fisker was real." "If they don't find you and talk to you, don't go saying anything about it. Don't try to talk to them. They don't know you. They know me, John, and Mikey. If you get away and we all got in trouble, you should let it be." Having to go back home to my mom's house for a few days put me on edge. I was nervous all day in school, and I was almost shaking when I got in the car with my mom. She didn't pick up on it. We drove off in silence. We got everything straightened out at the home, just so you know, Billy, she said, breaking the silence. Yeah, I said. Did they catch the guys? The guys that broke in, I mean. No, but I've had a few things done to the building to make it more secure, like some bars in some places. It will be much harder to get in. I wondered silently if it would be as hard to get out. I took my medication that night, resigning myself to my fate. Danny Fisker knew where I slept, and he would want revenge. At least I could sleep through it this time. When I dreamt, it was chaos, but Danny Fisker was there at times, drawing his long, blood-caked fingers across my chest and back. In one dream, I was running on the track, only to have it change to a dark and cloudy day suddenly. I looked back to see the monster grabbing hold of my legs, rooting me in place. He crawled up my legs, his fingers gripping my thighs. Then the dream shifted. I woke up more or less whole, but dazed. I faced another day at school and another return home. I sat and talked with Anna at lunch about the dreams. He's not physically there, though? She said. I don't know. I could just be out of it from the meds. Why are you taking them? You've avoided them before. Because I can't sleep otherwise. They calm me down, make it less scary. You had a system worked out before, didn't you? The adults would think something is up. The sedative effect of the drug is only supposed to last a little while. Well, I don't think you're crazy. Have you been having the same dreams? No, she said. Actually, I've been feeling very at peace about the monster. I haven't thought much about it. I'm much more worried about you. I think about you. A lot. I'm sorry I'm so out of it. I'll stop the medication again. I don't know what to do. She held my hand under the table and squeezed it tightly for a few moments. Trust God. He protected you before. He could protect you now. I'll try. I skipped my medication that night. I was wired. I kept hearing noises that upset me more than they should have. The sound of a car door closing, or an engine starting. The sound of wind outside the window. It started raining sometime after midnight, and I thought I could hear voices amid the patter, almost arguing at a high pitch. I saw lights outside my door. My mom wasn't sleeping either, at least for part of the night, and that put me on edge, too, filling my mind with possibilities. Was Danny Fisker tormenting my mother? I went over the events of the previous week. Always the empty, dark eyes encircled in crimson above a withered nose and a too-wide mouth came to me, almost real in my vision. At one point I tried sleeping, but the dark was too frightening. I turned on the lights and tried sleeping again, but the brightness of them defeated me. I found the wrench under my bed and hid it in my blankets. I lamented losing the silver dagger. Eventually the sky began to lighten again. I had made it through, but I knew I couldn't go on that way. I tortured my mind for ways to escape the haunting, but again I felt powerless. I didn't sleep during school the next day. Anna wasn't there, pretending to be sick again, I presumed. My mother picked me up from school and drove me to the funeral home. She was apparently needed for something, but I didn't inquire what. I looked around the place as I went to the office area, and I saw no sign of the struggle that we'd gone through with the monster. No blood, nothing broken. I sat myself down at a desk and tried to concentrate on my homework. It was nearly impossible. My eyes were so dry I couldn't do much more than tear up looking at the little words in my textbooks. While I was trying to work through things, I noticed an odor. This wasn't the kind of odor I was used to at the funeral home, or even in the morgue. There, the primary smell was of chemicals, the things my mother used for embalming and making a corpse presentable for display at a funeral. Those weren't exactly pleasant smells, but what I detected sitting at the desk was far worse. It was a sweet sort of smell, but it had horribly foul undertones. It smelled like overripe fruit and dead fish, along with something else. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it. I got up and found my mother exiting the morgue. "Do you smell that?" I said. "Something smells really bad." "I smell it," she said. "It started the other day, but it's getting worse." "What is it?" My mom sighed and sat down in a nearby chair. She put her head in her hands. "What?" I said again. "It's the smell of a rotting body," she said. The refrigeration has to be on the fritz, but everything checks out. I just took a thermometer to each separate locker and found them all operating at the right temperature." "It must be something else," I said. "It must be somewhere else." My voice rose in pitch, and I felt embarrassed to sound so optimistic. "Where else would a rotting body be?" "I don't know, but maybe we should call the detectives." My mom looked at me, confused. "It's a refrigeration issue. I've already called a repairman. I just can't figure out where the failure is." She sighed. "We're going to have to shut down and transport the body somewhere else, I'm afraid. This could be really bad, Billy." She took a breath. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't stress you. Everything will be taken care of." That night, I fell asleep despite not taking my medicine. I had reached a breaking point of tiredness and fell asleep with the lights on. I assumed the lights had some protective effect because I was not tortured by Danny Fisker that night, nor did I have any night terrors that blended with reality. My dreams were many, but sane. I dreamt most of school and of a place of total calm. It was like my father's apartment, but full of old furniture instead of new. It was small, cozy. I dreamt I was talking to Anna, but I could remember nothing of the conversation. Anna found me at lunch. She smiled almost tearfully when she saw me and hugged me. "I prayed for you. I prayed St. Michael's prayer. I was told it was answered." "I slept," I said. I didn't ask her who told her that her prayers were answered. "There was no demon." "Good," she said. "Thank you." My mom took me to the funeral home after school. Once again, the smell was present, only stronger than before. 2 repairmen showed up an hour later, rolling a cart full of tools. They took the elevator down to the morgue and, after donning some basic protection gear, began investigating the refrigeration system. I set myself to trying to understand my homework while they worked. "Holy Mother of God!" I heard the scream through the heavy steel door, as clear as if it had been said in my ear. I stood up quickly and followed my mother down the stairs. We were almost knocked over by one of the repairmen, who was crossing himself and muttering as he took the stairs. The other one came up behind him, taking off his mask. He was a black man, but even so he looked deathly pale. "We found something. Christ!" He shook his head. There's a dead body in the wall. We thought there might be an electrical problem, so we took off one of the access panels that was loose under the breakers. It looked old." He shook his head again. "We need to call the police, right?" "Yes," my mom said, her face draining just like the repairman. "I'll call right now." They both turned and ran up the stairs, leaving me at the door, forgotten for the moment. I was filled with a mix of emotions. There was a rise of tension in my mind and body, and I saw a chance to release it, to resolve the dissonance of my tortured soul. I quietly pushed open the door to the morgue. Truthfully, I half expected him to be standing there, looming over a dead body, devouring it, casting a knowing glance at me, either asking me to join him or letting me know I was next. All I saw, though, was the bright fluorescent lights of the morgue and the adjoining examination and embalming rooms. I walked past the exam rooms and toward the lockers. An old fuse box attached to a steel panel was leaning up against the wall. The proper breaker box was above it, with a bunch of wires hanging down over what was clearly a tunnel. There was a flashlight forgotten next to the panel. It was still on. I picked it up and kneeled down. Into the wall, into the very cinder blocks that made the concrete basement, was carved a small and rough tunnel. It seemed to go into the earth and turn left. As I got down on my knees, I was nearly overcome by the stench of decay. I crept forward slowly, keeping my light shining ahead of me. I went around the bend and saw a dim light. The light was a bare light bulb hanging from a makeshift ceiling in a very small room. A large body was laying on a dirty, gray mattress. The body was naked, but nearly gray with dirt and filth. Its hands and feet were enormous, as were the jaw and distorted face. Its eyes were sunken and partially closed, but had clearly been open at one point. It had a gaping wound on its side along with another small hole at the top of its chest, but all the blood had dried or congealed into rotten blackness. Despite the state of decay, I knew exactly who it was. It was Danny Fisker. The skin was puffy and grotesque, but it was surely his face. It was a surreal moment, staring at my dead tormentor, seeing him in all the stark reality of that light. I stared for a long time at the pitiful sight. There was no telling how long Danny Fisker had existed in that little hole, hiding, but he had a little pile of possessions, including comics of mine I had forgotten about at some point. His open, putrid mouth seemed fixed in a frown, but it was indeed too large, as was the jaw and face around it. The smell started to be too much to bear, and I backed out, sickened but also relieved. My mind felt suddenly released from a horrible burden of fear. I dropped the flashlight when I exited the tunnel and sat on my knees for a moment. "Thank you, God," I said, "and forgive me for killing." The detectives who had investigated the break-in, Sal and Harry, arrived a while later. Both repairmen had to stay to give statements. When released, they left in a hurry, not bothering to retrieve some of their tools that were near the tunnel. The detectives roped off the room. They donned hazard suits when some other police arrived and went into the tunnel with cameras. When they did that, my mom made a bunch of frantic calls to have the bodies transported to other facilities. It was dark outside when Sal and Harry re-emerged into the office area. They went outside and sat down in a couple of folding chairs, looking exhausted. I was sitting nearby under one of the outside lights, pretending to read. "I'm gonna need a drink," Harry said. "Or 12. "It'll have to wait," Sal said. "This kind of stuff never happens on a Friday." "Yeah, or when it does, we end up working the weekend," Harry said. "How are we gonna get this Bonnie out? Guy is big and liable to fall apart if we pull him out." Sal shrugged. "He's not that far gone. Me and a couple other big guys can get him out no problem. It'll be unpleasant, though." "It's already unpleasant." "Yeah, but look on the bright side. We caught our man." "We did?" "Acromegaly," Sal said. "You get a look at his hands." "It's him," I said, cutting in. Harry gave me a skeptical look, but Sal grinned at me. "How do you figure?" the big man said. "I've been thinking about it a lot," I said. "Yeah, me too, son," Sal said. "What's your take, huh?" "He's just a kid," Harry said. Sal smiled at him. "Let me indulge him." "He's been living in that little hole for a long time," I said. "I figure years, maybe longer. If he was really Danny Fisker, it would have to be decades. I found out his parents owned this place, but nobody really knows what happened to them. It was assumed they drowned." Sal smiled at Harry. "I know what to look up already." "He's been here scavenging at night," I said. "He's been cutting open the corpses and eating the organs." "Makes sense," Sal said. "They've all already been autopsied by the medical examiner. Nobody till now noticed, because why would you cut open a body twice?" "We'd have to ask the embalmer," Harry said. "But if so, he was clever. We'll have to have the other bodies looked at." "Yeah," I said. "It explains why the alarm system doesn't work. He never broke in." "Who put the holes in him, though?" Harry said. "That's what I want to know." "Whoever it was, he was doing God's work," Sal said. "I've seen a lot of shit. Pardon my French, son. A lot of shit. But this is by far the strangest and most disgusting case I've ever worked. Kid, I'm sorry I doubted you." "Yeah, I'm not crazy, I guess," I said. "But who could blame you for thinking that?" That was what the reports on the news ended up saying. They called the body Danny Fisker, but he couldn't be formally identified by dental records because of his condition. His jaw had grown far too large since any dentist had taken x-rays of him. It did come to light that Danny Fisker, the real person and son of the couple that owned the home, had been declared dead, but his body had never been recovered. His parents had been found after the boating accident. It was decided that he had made himself a space in the wall and crawled into it after his parents died. He was declared dead, and there was nobody to follow up on him. He lived in the morgue with a secret sub-basement and survived off eating dead people along with whatever garbage was being left behind in the office, a secret scavenger for years. Someone had come into the funeral home for some reason and stabbed him with a large wooden spear. He then crawled back into his hole and died of his injuries. What had driven him into his dark lair? What demons, or affliction, or evil gnawing at his soul? Nobody living could now say. I think, perhaps for all of us there that night, it was difficult to shake the feeling from then on of eyes watching us from the shadows whenever it became quiet and dark. Once you know that something truly frightening, truly horrible, can exist in flesh and blood, it becomes impossible to accept the myth of safety, or even privacy in a world that is designed to look sterile and safe.